Hello and welcome to the fourth and final episode of the Office Line Generator build. If you remember from last time, we finished with our GUI before we add the authentication, and we have our line generator ready and we can generate some quotes. And it's responsive and it works fine. Now we need to actually update our code here. But before we do that, we can Control C to stop the server, and we can move out. Stay in the frontend folder, and we're gonna install some more dependencies. So I'm going to copy this in here, and the dependencies we're going to install is Keycloak-JS, which is a JavaScript adapter for Keycloak Authentication, and it will handle login, logout, and token management directly from our frontend. So that's really helpful. We're also going to install React-OIDC-context, which is a React context library for handling OpenID Connect authentication flows. And it will provide a structured way for us to integrate authentication into our React components. And then we also need, let's see where that went here, at react-keycloak/web. And this is a React integration library for Keycloak, and it will simplify the process of the Keycloak authentication within our React app. And it will provide with some hooks and contexts. So this is all going to make sense later, but you need to install these three dependencies and just copy this, and then you're ready to move on. Okay, so another thing I want to do before we really start here is to move out some code from our line generator, because it's going to be pretty long if we keep all of this inside. So one thing that we definitely can move out is this function getScaleForQuote. So I'm going to take this and we're going to make a util file instead. So inside our utils here, we're going to create a new file, and this is going to be called, like this. This is going to be called quote scaling.js, and you can just copy in this function. And now in line generator, we are going to keep this line. This is fine, but we're going to have to import it instead. So we're gonna import getScaleForQuote. Let's see, I can just copy it in. So that's done. Now we removed some code from here. Now the other thing I want to move out is our gradient logic, this. So we can remove this, and we can create a new util file, and this is going to be called just gradients.js. And inside this, we're going to import color palettes and string to color from our other util file, color palettes. And we're going to export a function called getGradientForQuote. And we're going to pass in a quote here. And now we're just going to check if there is a quote, if it's defined. And if it's not, then we're just going to return a conic gradient of black to slightly less black, just like we did before. So it's going to be the same logic here, and then we're going to define our base hue again. And you could probably just have copied over now that I think about it, but I'm going to do it again anyway. And I explained this logic in the last episode, so if you feel confused, then you can just check that out. Like this, and we need our colors as well, string to colors. We're going to pass in our character here. We're going to pass in 5 colors and our base hue, like this, and then it's going to return a conic gradient of our colors, like this, colors.join. I'm going to join them by a comma, and this is done. So now we have moved out some utility clauses, and we are ready to move on to create some new components. So inside our component, I want to create first of all, a login button, LoginButton.jsx. And this is going to be a really small component. So we're just going to export a login button, and this is going to take a parameter of our login URL. And this is where we want to redirect to when we we press the login button. So the only thing it's going to do is it's going to return a button with the on-click of a anonymous function, which is going to redirect the user to our login URL. And then it's going to have some styling. It's going to have some padding like this. It's going to have a blue background and some white text, and it's going to be rounded. Now we can close it up and just say login. That is the whole button. Now it's done. So that was easy. Now we can move on to a little more challenging component. And this is going to be our toggle switch, which we will use to toggle if authentication mode should be on or off. So we're going to create a new component here. Oh, sorry, toggleSwitch.esx. And now this is a little more confusing. First of all, we're going to import some stuff. Use state and use effect from React. We are going to import also motion from FrameMotion. Like this, and then we can start building our component. So we're going to export toggle which like this. And this is going to take quite a lot of parameters. So it's going to take an onToggle parameter, which is going to be a callback for when the switch changes. We're going to have an initial value of false. And this is because the switch is going to start off being not turned on. Let's see, did I do anything wrong here? Initial false now. Okay, let's continue. Label is going to be default to enable login. Now disabled is going to be set to false, but we can change this later. And we're also going to have another parameter called force on. And this is for refreshing the page. Then if we have turned on the toggle, we still want it to be on. We don't want it to fall into the default of being off. So this is going to be our parameters for the toggle switch. Yes, and now we can continue on. And inside of here, we are going to have a state variable, which is going to be called enabled. Like this, and it's going to be set to the initial parameter. So at the beginning, it's gonna enable is going to be false, and then we can set it to on when we have turned it on, when we toggle the toggle switch. Now we're gonna have a use effect here, and our use effect is gonna watch our force on parameter, and when that is turned true, then we're gonna set enable to true, because when force on is true, then we want it to be the toggle switch to be on when we reload. So then we just need to pass this force on like this. Okay, so now the use effect is done, and now we can move on to a function called handle toggle, and this is going to be what happens when you press on the toggle switch. Now we're gonna check if the button or the toggle switch rather is disabled or have force on, like if it should stay on and it cannot be changed by pressing it. And then we're just gonna return. If we should change it, then we're gonna create a new state, which is gonna be the opposite of what it was. So if it was on, this is gonna be off. If it was off, it's gonna be on. And then we're gonna set enabled to this new state. So we're gonna flip it. And then we're gonna check if on toggle, then we're gonna on toggle with the new state. So this is going to allow us to flip the toggle switch. And that is it for functions. So now we're just going to return our elements. So first we're going to create a label like this with some class names of flex column, items center, gap of 1, cursor pointer, and select none. And this is going to stack the switch and label vertically. It's going to center the items horizontally. It's going to make a small gap between the switch and the label. It's going to change the cursor to a pointer, and it will prevent the text selection on click. With this label done, inside it we're going to have a motion div with on click of handle toggle. We don't need this parameter here, or this parenthesis rather. And then we're going to have a while tap, and we're going to set the scale to disabled We're gonna set the scale depending on if disabled or force on is on. Now if they are, we're gonna just keep it, and if they are off, then we're gonna scale it down a bit. Then we need some classes. We're gonna have some relative with 12, height 6, rounded, full, flex, item center, some padding. On focus, we're gonna have an outline of none. We're also gonna have focus visible and focus visible ring blue 400. And this is gonna do that it will show a blue ring when the switch is focused via keyboard. Yeah, and then we also need transition, colors, and duration 300, which will ensure smooth transitions when the background color changes from gray to blue, or the other way around. We also need some more here. Sorry, we're not finished. There's a lot of classes. Then we go into check. So we need to change these to these guys like this, and we need to check if enabled. And if it is, then we're going to set the background to a blue, and if it's not, it's going to be a gray color like this. And I see what's wrong here. We need to have one of these like this. Okay, so if it's enabled or not, we're going to set the background to blue or gray. And then we're also going to check if it is disabled or have force on. If it does have any of those, we're going to set its opacity to be 50%, and we are not going to allow it to be clicked or hovered. It's going to show a different mouse event, like a stop sign. And we're going to have a cursor or pointer. So like this, and now we are done with the classes finally. Now we're going to need a role for screen readers to know what it is, and it's going to be a switch. We're going to have an area checked of enabled, and this will tell screen readers whether the switch is currently on or off. We are going to need an area label for this. We're just going to set it to the label, and then a tab index of 0. And we're also going to have an on key down, and we're going to check it with a event here, key event like this. And inside here, we're going to check if this key was, e.key is the enter button, or if it is the space button, and if disabled and force on is not on. If they press enter or the space and disabled or force on is not on, then we're going to prevent defaults. We're going to handle toggle. So if the user presses enter or space while focused, it will prevent the default scroll and submit behavior, and it's just going to call handle toggle like a click. And this is only going to work if it's not disabled or forced on. Yeah, so now we're done with this. Here, so we can actually close it up. Yeah, like this. And now we need another div with some animations. And this is going to move the ball of the switch either left or right, depending on if it's enabled or not. Then we're going to have a transition for the ball moving, which is going to be the type of spring. So it's springy. We're going to have a stiffness of 500 and a damping of 30 like this. And we're going to have some styling on this as well with a set width and height. And it's going to have a white background, and it's going to be completely rounded and with a drop shadow. Yeah, so that's the div. And outside of this div, we will also create a span element with some text sizing depending on the screen size. And some bold text, and the text is going to be a gray color. And inside here, we are going to have our label text like this. And now we can just export this like this, and then I can just format it so it looks a bit nicer. And this is the toggle switch. And now we just need to modify our environment variable to get some Keycloak information on there, so that we can use now when we move on to the more authentication process of this. So inside our .env.local file, currently we only have the API URL, but we're gonna need some more. So I'm just gonna copy this in. And what we need now is our base URL, which is just gonna be our Keycloak port 8080. Our realm is demo realm, client, gateway client, and our redirect URI is going to be to our front end with localhost 5173. So just copy this in or write it yourself, and then you're ready to continue. Okay, so with this done, we can now continue on with creating another util file. And this is going to be for our authentication process. So I'm just going to call it auth.js. Now, this is not going to be a big util file. It's going to be pretty small. So we're just going to define a function here, get roles from token. And this, just like the name says, is going to allow us to extract a realm role from our authentication token. Like this. First, we're just going to do a basic check if the token is defined. And if it's not, we're just going to return an empty array. Then we're going to do a try catch because something can go wrong here. And we're going to extract the payload from the JWT token. Now, a JWT token or JSON web token is divided by a header, payload, and signature. And they are divided by a dot. So the first part is going to be the header, the middle part is going to be the payload, and the last part is going to be the signature. And we are only interested in the payload here because it's going to provide us with the information about the user and its roles. So we're going to have to split this token by dots, and what we want is the second part, so at index 1. Now we're going to return this payload if it has a realm role, or we're going to just return an empty array again, like that. And then we need a catch with an error here, and then we're just gonna console log it so that we can see it. Error decoding token, and with our error, and we're gonna return again an empty array. So here we're just going to extract the realm role from the authentication token, and we are going to use this later on in our line generator. Great. Now with this done, we can configure our app's entry point, and that is going to be the main.jsx. And what we're going to do is that we're going to import, and it's called auth provider, and this is going to be from React OIDC contexts, like this. And now we need to configure our OIDC configurations that we're going to use in our app. And I'm just going to copy this in because I'm lazy. So I'm going to take all of this like this. Let's see, and I'm going to explain it pretty shortly. So first of all, we have authority. And this is the URL of the Keycloak's endpoint, you can say. So we're going to first take the base URL, which points at 8080. And then /realm and our realm name. Then we need our client ID, and we get this from the environment file as well. Our redirect URI is going to point to our front end. The same for our post logout redirect URI. Then we have response type code, and that's because we use the Authorization Code Flow. Then we have a scope OpenID profile email, and it's just for basic information about the user, like its email and profile information and stuff. And then we have our PKCE method, and that stands for proof key for code exchange. So, and we are just going to use SHA-256, and this is for extra security because it prevents token interception attacks. So, and then on sign-in callback, so this is after we have logged in, then we will get a lot of params in our URL, and I think that looks ugly, so I wanted to remove it. So we're just going to replace it, so it's just localhost 5173 again. So that's what this does. And now the only thing we really need to do down here is that we need to surround our app with this auth provider. Sorry, not 3, and then OIDC config like this. And we're going to wrap this around our app to be able to store the authentication information. So like this, and now our entry point is also done. Now we can actually move out a second part of code from our line generator, and we are going to take this code first of all from our line generator component here, and what we're going to do is we're going to create a new utils file, and this is going to be called useQuote.js. We can just paste this in here like this, and then we're also going to need a second part, and it's this fetch random line function. So we're just going to take that. I'm going to also paste it inside here. And now we can modify this a bit. So I'm going to format so it doesn't look so bad. And now we can work on updating our useQuote. util here. So first of all, we're going to have to import some stuff. We are going to import useState and use callback from React. Callback from React, like this. And use callback is a React hook that makes it possible so that on every re-render of this hook, we don't have to re-render our function. So this is just going to keep in memory, so it doesn't have to re-render every time. And we also need to import the get roles from token, which we defined earlier in our auth util file. Now we need the actual function here, export use quote, and it's going to take two parameters, API URL and a user parameter, like this. And now we can move this inside of here, and also the fetch random line we can move inside like this. And we are going to add the use callback to our fetch random line function. It looks like this. And we're going to keep this, but we're also going to check the roles now. So we're going to find roles, and we're going to call the function get roles from token, which we defined. And we're going to check if we have a user and it has an access token, like this. Then we're going to check if the roles that this user has includes the role paid, which we defined in our Keycloak realm. If it doesn't, then we're going to set an error text of you must have a paid subscription to access this feature, like this. And this was the text that you saw in the beginning when I showed what would happen if the user didn't have permission to use our service. So this is going to come up on the card instead of a quote if it doesn't have the paid role. And we're going to set loading to false because we have set our error instead. And then we're going to return. Now if it has the role, then we can continue with this call to our API. So we are only going to call our API if the user has the paid role. This is correct. We don't need to change anything. Let's see. No. And we are done here. The only thing we need to add is we need to pass in the API URL and the user, like this. And we should also return our quote state variable, our loading state variable, our error state variable, and the function itself, like this. So now this is done and we can format it. And now the only thing that's really left is to modify our line generator, and then we can test it. This is going to be quite a lot, so we will take it step by step. Now, as you can see, there are a lot of, or some rather, imports we don't no longer need. So we can remove these imports, but we're going to add some more now because we have moved out a lot of components and utils. Import, the first one that we're going to import is use auth. This is from my React -oidc-context. We're also going to import our toggleSwitch component. We're also going to import our use quote util and our get gradient for quote. And the last one we need is import get scale for quote from utils code scaling, like this. So now we have imported what we need, and now we can continue on. So the next part that we're going to need inside of this line generator is some state variables. So we are going to have a boolean that is going to check if the user is authenticated. It's going to have a user with the user information. We're going to check if it's loading. Sorry, it's going to be small. Signing redirect, and sign out redirect, which is going to hold the URLs, I think. And these are going to be use auth, like this, and we need brackets. So it's authenticated is going to be true if we have logged in. The user is going to hold token information, which we use in the use quote hook. Is loading shows whether the auth is still initializing. Sign in redirect and sign out redirect is a helper function that we're going to use for login and logout. Now we are also going to need another one, which is going to be quote, loading, error, and fetch random line, which we are all going to get from our use quote hook that we defined earlier. I'm going to pass in our API URL and our user, like this. And we're also going to add an enable login toggle, which we're going to track with a state variable. So with this, we're going to check if we are allowed to log in or not. And that will be depending on the toggle switch. So we are going to get what we have stored in local storage, which we're gonna do later, if we are allowed or not to log in based on what the toggle for the enable login is. Like this, and it's going to default to false unless the user has turned it on before. So that is that. Now we also need some functions to handle if we should log in or out. So I'm going to define it here, handle login logout function like this. And we're going to check if is authenticated is true, then we have already logged in. And then we're going to call sign out redirect, which is going to sign us out. And else, if we are not logged in, then we're going to call sign in redirect to sign us in. Great. Handle click we're going to keep as it is. Now we have our scale here, but we also need to get our gradient now because we moved it out to a different file. So we're going to define our gradient as get gradient for quote. And we're going to pass in our quote. So that's great. Now we have everything we need. And now we just need to update our return. Now the first thing we're going to add is our toggle switch. And it's going to be just outside our main here. So we are going to create a div with some class names of position absolute. And it's going to be in the top left corner like this. Inside here, we're going to add our toggle switch component, and we're going to set its on toggle to be, let's see, like this, the state variable. And we're going to set if we are allowed to log in or not based on the state. And we're going to also store it in local storage with the same name as we used earlier, login toggle. And we're going to set the state. So we're going to save in the local storage what the state is of the toggle. And then we're going to set a label to enable login like this. We're going to set disabled to be initially false. We're going to set force on to depend on if we are logged in or not. And we're going to set initial to allow login. So initially we're going to allow login. We are going to be able to press the toggle switch and it's going to force it on if we are logged in, because if we're logged in, we can't turn off the option to log in or out because we are already logged in and we can only log out now. So that is the toggle switch component. Now we should also add our login button. So we're going to create another div here with some class names of position absolute, top, and now right. So this is going to be in the top right corner. Inside here, we're going to have a regular button with the on click of handle login logout function. And we are going to set disabled, and we're going to check if is loading is on, or we are not allowed to log in and we are not already logged in. So if we're not already logged in and we're not allowed to log in either, or it's the auth process is still loading, then it's going to be set to disabled, or otherwise it's going to be false. So it's not going to be disabled otherwise. Nice. And now we're going to have some class names, and we're going to have it like this and this. And inside here, we're going to set some padding. We are going to make it rounded. We're going to have some white text, some semi-bold font, some transition colors. Now check if is authenticated is true or not. Let's see, like this. And if it's true, if we are logged in, then the button is going to turn red, and on hover, it's going to turn a darker red like this. I'm going to do this. And if not, we are going to check if we are allowed to log in or not. And if we are allowed to log in, we're going to set the background to a blue and hover effect of making the background a little darker blue. Or if we are not allowed to log in, so like this, we are going to set the background to a gray and cursor of not allowed. So what this means is if we are already logged in, then the button is going to be red, and it's going to, then it's going to be red. If we're not logged in and we are allowed to log in, then it's going to be blue. And if we are not logged in and we're not allowed to log in, then it's going to be gray. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. So now we need to close this up like this. I already had it, sorry. And now we need to have what we should have inside the button. And now we're going to check if it's loading. If it is loading, then we are just going to set it to ... the button. And then we're going to check if it is not loading, then we're going to check if it's authenticated, if we have logged in. If we have logged in, the text is going to be log out. If we have not logged in, then it's going to be login. So that's our button done. And now with that finished, we are actually done here. We're done with the line generator and everything else. So now we can actually test it. Okay, so I tested to build this and run it, and I found two issues that I had accidentally put in. So the first one is inside the toggle switch for the enabled state variables. It should be regular brackets, not curly brackets. So that's the first issue. And then the second issue inside the gradients util file, and I had accidentally a semicolon inside here. So I just move it out. So with that done, now we can hopefully do npm run build to see if we have any other issues. Let's see here. It looks like it's going to be fine. Yeah, then we can do npm run dev, and we can navigate to the localhost. And let's see, here we are. Now we have this enable login that we can toggle on or off, and if it's off, then we can't log in. Let's see, and then we can log in. So first I'm gonna log into the free account, which doesn't have the paid role, and then when we try to use it, you must have a paid subscription to access this feature. So we're not allowed to use it, and now we can't turn off login mode because we're already logged in. Now if we log in as the paid user and we try to use it, we are allowed. So this is basically it. Now the last part that I want to add to this is if we don't have a login enabled, I want to be still able to use this feature, because this is like a demo, and this is like if you want to have it authenticated or not. So right now we can't use the feature because we aren't logged in with the correct role. So we're going to have to change that, but other than that we are done. Okay, so to fix this issue with that we want to be able to use the service if we not have the authentication mode toggled, then we need to fix in two files. The first one we're gonna fix in is the use quote file, and we're gonna just add another parameter here, and we're gonna check if the login is enabled or not. Now, the next thing we're gonna do is, before we check for roles, we're gonna do an if statement, and we're going to check if our login enabled, if it is enabled or not. If the toggle switch is enabled, then we want to use the authentication mode, so then we want to check for roles. And if the toggle switch is not on, then we just want to call the API directly, not having to check for roles. So that is that, and we also need to add this login enabled variable here. Now we are done in use quote, and we also need to update the line generator. We need to move this to happen before, because we need the allow login variable that we're gonna pass to the use quote. So allow login like this, and if I'm not mistaken, I think we are actually done here. Yeah, so now we can test it. So right now it should work without the auth mode. Yeah, it does. So now we can use it. If we enable it, yeah, I forgot something. I was just thinking about that. Now it doesn't clear, so we are going to have to update in use quote. I forgot. And inside this role check, we also need to set the quote to null, like this. So now it should work better. So I'm going to refresh. If we don't have auth mode enabled, we can use it just fine. If we enable it, we won't be able to use it unless we have the paid role. So we're gonna log in to our free user. You cannot use it, and you cannot turn it off because you're logged in. Then we're gonna log in as our paid, and now we can use it. And if we refresh, we are still logged in, we're still able to use it, and the enable login is still on. So yeah, so that was the Office project. I had a lot of fun creating this project, and if you would like to see more from this channel, then please leave a comment with some requests on what I should build next. So thank you for watching, and goodbye for now.